Happy Friday, folks. It's Friday evening. Triple Crown coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia. This is a round 7 summary of the Global War 1939 series. And lots happened this round. Fighting all over the map. Lots of key battles and key things happening. We will get into probably the most significant battle first, and that is the Germans attacking Moscow. And Moscow fell fairly easily. The Germans came in with about 10 more units, and they had 4 bombers total, one of them being a heavy bomber, this guy here, and they survived with, you can see that stack there. They've got 1 Panzer V and a couple Stug 3 tank destroyers and a whole schwack of Panzer IVs, which attack and defend at a 7. So Germany did lose a lot of their Panzer IIIs in the attack. I think they attacked with it was over 40 armor in total, about 90 units. And that was the key. It was their heavy hitters. And it went 4 rounds, and rounds 2, 3, and 4 that did the job. Round 1, actually, the Russians almost evened the battle in regards to numbers because they had a fortification, and all of their infantry were defending at a 4, and some of them were defending at a 5. And so the Russians did not have the armor or the heavy hitters and the counterpunch in rounds 2, 3, and 4. So that was fairly significant there. I love the fact that these extra armor now are a part of the game. You know, there was actually no Tiger tanks because Germany can actually make Tiger tanks until, they could have made one the round before, but they decided to build aircraft, but they built one in Bulgaria instead. So there is a Tiger tank there. But just a key to point out to anybody, if they ever attacking Moscow, any vacated territories, they will pop up a partisan. So what the Germans and Italians kind of strategically did was sort of to cover all of the bases so that all of the territories, once Moscow fell, either a plane or something could land on it. And that way the Germans are not having to sort of clean up after the fact. So, but what happens when Moscow falls is that Sweden becomes a pro-Axis neutral. So the Germans have gone into the capital, which is Gothenburg, and they've inherited this small navy here, which is a coastal battleship, a destroyer, and a coastal submarine. So Germany now has to decide what it wants to do. The Axis now have 12 victory points, that's what they need to win. So how does Germany help out Japan? Do they now make a play for Cairo, or do they do a sea lion? And we will get into sort of strategy in a minute, but the Germans decided to build another battleship, a cruiser, and a destroyer, and their navy here is just growing and growing and growing. On the western front here, the Spanish units here came down and took out the Portuguese in Seville, and the fighter and tactical bomber took out the damaged Portuguese coastal battleship and destroyer, and they did not suffer a hit, and they landed in Rome. And the one Spanish-Moroccan guy came down here and liberated Morocco, so the British fighters said, that's it, you're not going to basically have free reign of Northwest Africa. So they came in with 3 fighters, and they were successful in killing the infantry, but they did lose a fighter in the process. So it wasn't all bad for the Allies, and finally the British were able to successfully capture Tobruk, and they survived with about 5 armor, 1 infantry, and all of their aircraft. So they did not lose any aircraft to AAA. And they also decided to take Sicily and take Greece, which also no Axis units left in North Africa. Sorry, folks, little a little cold for the Triple Crown, and so they were able to annex Turkey. So they got the small navy down here, and there's a couple fighters here, and about 4 units in Istanbul with a fortification, and also behind that is an artillery, a cavalry, and a couple more infantry. So the British now have, or the Commonwealth now have, 8 transports on the board for the first time, which that is a sort of a collaborated NO bonus. So the British get a 5 NO bonus, Canada gets 2, and the Australians also get 2 NO bonus. And that kind of represents the Commonwealth trade all over the whole globe during World War II. So that's kind of what's happening there. So the Germans have basically mopped up now Portugal and Spain. They're going to take Gibraltar next turn. And so does the German fleet now head into the Med and sort of take care of this British fleet? And this British fleet is kind of hung out right here. They've got these damaged battleships with only move 1 space, and they are just hovering here because they can't get too far back to Cairo to repair, and they want to be in position to sink any Italian fleet that makes its appearance in the Med. So that's why they're still sitting there, in case anybody's wondering. Now the British have a couple more ships over here, but what's going to happen? So I believe, and I talked to CB's Bill, that currently the British have been building, they've got about 22 units now sitting in London, and they're just going to keep building. Now the Germans, do they make a play for London? I think it's actually smarter for them to go for Cairo. Now going for London probably takes a little bit of pressure off Japan, but you know, London can be liberated by the Americans. So call me whatever, let me know what you think, but that's kind of what's happening there. Over here, the Americans are doing the opposite of what the Germans did, or the same thing the Germans did in Spain, and they took all of South America. So they mopped it up with their medium and heavy bombers and their collaborated effort with the Brazilians, and they brought a couple 4 units from sort of the southern area of South America and came down and did do a landing in Santa Cruz, and also in you can see the sea zone here, also in Chile. So now South America is all in American control, which is, you know, about a 6 or 7 IPP bonus, and the Germans are going to be getting up here about a 5 NO bonus. So kind of works its way out, kind of even there. So, and now I just want to point out what's happening here in Japan. Now, the best Japanese player, now this is talking about BBR, is a good friend of mine by the name of G.I. Joe. And what he does when, you know, America decides to go kill Japan is that he doesn't get too aggressive as Japan. He kind of was always in position to sort of protect the assets he needs, and those are the victory. In BBR, there's different victory conditions, but in 39, they are victory cities. And in here, they are Singapore, the Philippines, Hong Kong, and Shanghai, and obviously Tokyo. So all Japan really has to do is sort of keep the British away over there, and the CCP and the KMT are basically neutered. And there is a couple Russians. So Russia lost its economy when Moscow fell. However, they did build the turn before 5 units, a couple infantry, and a heavy armor. They're going to try and help out the CCP, but the Chinese don't have much pushback. They're making 4 IPP. The KMT is also, the CCP is also making 4. And next turn, Russia will be able to spend 15 IPP at their factory here in Novosibirsk. But Japan, you know, they don't have to keep pushing. It's an expensive endeavor to keep going in this direction. So what does Japan need to do? And that is, you can see now they're starting to build up a strong defense. They've got a military base here in the Philippines. They've got another military base in Borneo. And they're not too greedy. And this is where Japan can get into trouble, is if they get too greedy or get their navy out of position. So they currently have a small navy down here. which is not at a naval base, which is a little bit of a problem. But they have a massive navy of about 33 or 34 units sitting here off the coast of the Philippines. And they've got another small navy up here, which they are starting to spend. Last turn, they built another Yamato, 3 destroyers and 2 submarines and a fighter. So Japan is just sort of basically getting ready to basically lock down all of these victory cities along the coast of China and also in the Philippines. And the Americans, they have a little bit of a problem. They did combine with their fleet with the British, the Canadians, the Australians, the New Zealanders, but they are not sitting on a naval base. So they are currently 3 sea zones away. They don't have a scramble, so the Japanese could hit them. So they're sitting in the Gilbert Islands. The Japanese could hit them. However, the Americans, without the scramble, this combined fleet here is about 10 more units than the Japanese. So Japan doesn't have to worry yet. The Americans are spending everything in the Pacific, along with the British and the Canadians finally spent in the Pacific. So Canada built a submarine. The British built a destroyer at the Colonial Factory here in British Columbia. And the Americans built a couple carriers, a destroyer, 4 submarines, and 3 transports, which they can fully load next turn. And they've got a couple destroyers that made their way over from the eastern seaboard. And down here, the Australians and the British built a naval transport, which gave them their 8, and they built 3 submarines. So, but this territory down here is currently 4 sea zones away from the Carolines. So do the Americans go there next turn? Which then this fleet, if it moves up, will be within range of the Americans. So a little bit of a cat and mouse game going on here. And this is what I find in BBR or in other games like 39. It's interesting because Japan can see what America's building and they have 2 turns to react. So if America's doing a heavy transport build, well, Japan then is building all Navy because America has to have naval superiority. And if America is building only Navy, well, then Japan's like, we'll go ahead and build Navy. We're just going to build transports and go and reinforce our positions, and you will never be able to take them. So it's a bit of a game of, really paying attention to what your enemies do, but also reacting accordingly. With every single turn, every single purchase is important. And sometimes one transport, or either having it or not, or having a destroyer, could mean the difference of your Navy surviving or capturing an important victory city. So that is what is happening in the Pacific. I currently think Japan's economy is quite healthy right now. They're making about $95 with, all the stuff they've got over here. They've got almost all the money islands. So America's making 115 and Anzac is now down to 14. So is this going to be a game of attrition where America outspends the Japanese? However, America still has to build transports every turn and get guys across, and they're still 2 or 3 turns away from doing any damage. So it's going to be interesting here what happens. And do the Germans then, with this massive armada of armor up here, do they start to make their way down here into the Middle East and over to Cairo? And also with all these fast movers here, do they take Istanbul next turn? So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The Italians retook Greece. They are building some fast movers of themselves. They've got 3 mech and 2 artillery over here in Turin. So that's going to be interesting there. Lots of game to play. It's only round 7, folks, so stay tuned for round 8. Thanks for watching.